If we have a look at some basic statistics, what you can see on screen at the moment is some common combat sports and the length over which they are competed over, and the number of rounds and the duration of the rounds. And what you can see on the screen is that boxing has the greatest contest duration in there. Not necessarily the greatest length in terms of a round, but certainly has the most rounds and also is competed over the longest duration. And what I've done is a little bit of dirty science, and I've taken some of the reported highest VO2 max values, which you can see on the screen, and what I've done is I've then used a little bit of correlation to look at the VO2 max versus the contest duration. And what you can see is that those athletes that are required to compete over a longer duration tend to have a larger aerobic capacity, which tells us something that we need to work on, and that is primarily we need to start thinking about how well adapted our boxers' aerobic capacities are for performance. And if you think that this can be extrapolated probably up to middleweight and all the way down to flyweight, you could say that aerobic capacity really is important, especially when you get into that high level of competition and elite performance. Now, Lachlan James produced this nice systematic review a few years ago now on what it takes to win in MMA. And there's a lovely little figure in this paper where he looks at the difference between high level performers and lower standard performers in terms of their aerobic capacity in sports that make up mixed martial arts. And primarily on here are grappling based sports, which, as you know have you seen from the previous screen, don't tend to have a high VO2 max. And so the sensitivity of their aerobic capabilities is probably all not that great. But nevertheless, what Lachlan found was that there was an effect size, I think, around about 0.6, which is a moderate effect, so a large difference between, not large, but a moderate difference between those wrestlers, grapplers, those involved in the type of sports in MMA, that the higher level performers had a better aerobic capacity than their lower standard counterparts. And I think when you look at the data, what you can actually see is that there's probably all not that much difference. There's an outlier in this data, and so perhaps it's skewed just a little bit. But in terms of striking sports, what Hemley Shabin found was that karate performers were able to outperform their lower standard counterparts when he compared higher performers versus lower performers in a karate style intermittent test. And that tells us something else about performance as well. Like, yes, aerobic capacity is important, but also we need to start thinking about intermittent performance as well, and high intensity performance, because in combat sports, that seems to be giving us a little bit more of a more sensitive profile, a little bit more information about how we need to be performing or training or even testing and characterizing our athletes.